in addition to protecting our clients, we're called upon to deal with the issue when they have a breach. So if there's a breach, if a client says, well, we think or we've been told that our data has been breached, what's the first thing you do, or what's the first thing that you advise that you tell our clients to do?
The first thing that I advise clients to do is to hire a lawyer.
Right.
Again, that wasn't the answer you were looking for, right?
No, that's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay.
So why do you tell a client to ask to hire a lawyer first?
The fact of the matter is that, and there's really no way of getting around this, anybody who has paid attention to the lurid press coverage of the major data breaches over the last 5 years has to come to the conclusion that most organizations do not have the first clue about what to do when they think that their systems have been hacked or breached. Okay? So what really has to happen when there is a reasonable belief that there has been an intrusion by somebody who shouldn't be in the system is for someone to connect with someone who has been in that space before, who's been through a number of breaches, who knows the steps that need to be taken, knows the kinds of stakeholders who need to be involved. This includes lawyers, and I'll get into the lawyer's role in a minute, outside forensic people who can get into your system to determine what happened and why and what kind of damage needs to be done. Crisis public relations people. One of the things we've seen in some of the larger breach responses is public messages that really don't inspire a great deal of confidence. Other steps may need to be taken depending upon the size and the nature of the breach, the kind of information that may have been lost. Contact needs to be made with law enforcement, sometimes law enforcement at the very highest level. I want to speak briefly about the lawyer's involvement. Bob, you and I used to joke a few years ago about how we will very often be asked questions by clients as if we were engineers. And you'll also recall an event where one of the forensic people we work with said, but you guys sort of know what engineers know. And sometimes you're actually mistaken for system engineers, and that's why people enjoy working with you. One of the crucial things about having a lawyer involved is that by dint of training, lawyers are equipped to address problems in I'm going to say a more calm and systematic way. But very crucially, when a lawyer is involved and is essentially the umbrella under which the breach response activities are taking place, there's the opportunity for these activities to be protected by the attorney-client privilege, so that not everything that a company is doing is necessarily going to be subject to public scrutiny, and very often, quite a bit of it should not be subject to public scrutiny. There may be internal dialogues going on that really do need to be confidential. Not to hide anything from the public, because it really is a matter of a lawyer giving legal advice to his or her client. Same thing goes with communications with law enforcement. These are things that lawyers are far better equipped to do than lay people, even highly intelligent, highly trained, very experienced lay people.
Mike, that actually goes into something that you and I have discovered, which is that there's a general feeling that very often the consultants have, that the moment they find that there's been any kind of intrusion in a system, that's something which triggers a public announcement and all of the breach notification requirements, which, as you and I know, can be very, very costly. But we've also found that that's not always the case.
We find that it's typically not the case. I would say, Bob, probably in the last dozen security incidents we've been involved in, a determination has been made not only with our involvement, but with the involvement of appropriate forensic professionals, computer professionals, system people, that in fact there was no data that was lost. In other words, not every security incident is a data breach which is associated with the loss of a lot of personal information or personal health information. One of the major mistakes that a lot of companies make is that they start notifying people almost immediately that there's been a breach, when in fact it's really not the right thing to do. Notifying people that there's been a breach when there hasn't been a breach creates some incredible negative PR. It can wreak some reputational damage on you that was simply unnecessary. And what it will also do is attract a lot of scrutiny, especially if you're a larger entity, where in fact it may simply not have been necessary. The bottom line is, under the, how many, 47 or 48 state breach notification laws? Is it
48 plus Guam and District of Columbia, yeah.
Okay, so basically 48 breach notification statutes. Essentially, data has to be lost, data has to be stolen, taken, or exfiltrated from a system in order for a breach notification to be triggered. And very often, that does not happen.
Even, and there's another side, even when there has been a breach, we found that people jump the gun and they notify, they publicize the breach before they really know what has happened. And they find that they have to give not one, not two, but 3 or more notices, which just triples the amount of bad information and creates much less confidence that this company has any ability to control its technology and its information.
I think one of the worst steps a company can take is prematurely sending out a breach notification, very often with errors, and then having to issue a curative notification. The reputational damage is just enormous.
Mike, going to just a question about coming back to training. If you were to give just one piece of advice to a client on what they and their employees should focus on to try to avoid an infection with malware, what kind of advice would you give? What general statement would you make to them?
I would give 2 pieces of advice. In other words, I would treat passwords very much like underwear. You don't want people to see them, and you should change them often. Okay? That's piece of advice number 1. Piece of advice number 2 is to look at the email message carefully before you respond to it. Determine whether it's coming from somebody you know or don't know. Consider whether the message is unusual. Look at the spelling in the from line. Is American Express spelled with 3 S's? Something that I saw very recently, which was a spear phishing attack. That's really it. Look before you click.
And I always would tell people that they ought to consider what bad thing is going to happen if I don't click this on this link, and what bad thing is going to happen if I don't respond to this email. Usually it's not bad if that happens.
This is where you and I differ, because I don't think people really think about this.
Well, I think we both agree that people don't think a lot about this stuff. Okay. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure talking, Mike. I'm sure we'll have a chance again as this area changes a lot. We'll have completely new and exciting things to talk about soon.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
We hope you found this video informative. Please watch our other videos at Mangels YouTube or jmbm.com.